welcome to this week's episode of Since I Was Young, a podcast dedicated to all things Heart of Midlothian. This week we will be discussing what could prove to be a very, very pivotal 3 points in the season of Heart of Midlothian. If the season pans out how we all hope it does, I think the result that Hearts received, or Hearts gained at Dundee Park weekend, will be looked back on as quite an important 3 points to take, thanks to a certain goalkeeper that we'll talk about later. Before we do get stuck into this week's episode, folks, please do consider dropping a subscribe on the YouTube channel. We've seen a little bit of growth over the last few weeks, and it has been massively, massively appreciated. I feel like I say it every single week, but it is what it is. So yeah, whilst you're down there, leave your thoughts in the comment section. What did you think about the Park performance, result? How good is Craig Gordon? Just show some Craig Gordon love in the comments. I think that's pretty much what it's for. You can also find all of our social media channels in the description down below. You can also find us on Spotify at Since I Was Young Podcast. That is all the formalities said and done. John, we know you are a Craig Gordon enthusiast. Have you come down from Cloud9 yet?
No, mate. I'll be residing there for quite some time to come. It was delightful to see him back behind the sticks, between the sticks. And to see him, that kind of performance over just 45 minutes, we have so much to talk about just from him alone. And he's 43 years old. It's outstanding. It is. The man just doesn't stop, does he?
No, he does not. He does not. I think it's we might as well just get sort of stuck straight into the game. Obviously, it was billed as quite an important game for us, obviously, with Celtic winning with their statement victory with the return of Martin O'Neill the previous day by 4-0. They won. That you would put down as a very much a statement victory, very much we're still here, we're not going away, we're up for the chase sort of thing. And I think a lot of people then sort of turned their attention to Hearts. Obviously, we were the earlier kick-off on the Sunday. Rangers followed our game against Aberdeen. But I think a lot of sort of eyes were on Hearts as if to say, right, how do you respond to that Celtic have done the previous day? Like, you're the one that's leading the pack, so it's up to you to respond to what Celtic have done. And I think that's just how the remainder of the season is going to go. There's going to be eyes on us in terms of what we do and how we react. And because Celtic and Rangers appear to have found some sort of rhythm again, you would imagine. And we all knew that was going to happen at some point. I don't think there's any doubt of that. Rangers have strengthened their team with some new arrivals as well as Danny Role obviously getting a little bit more of a tune out of his team than he has done previously. So always knew there was going to be an old firm, I don't want to say an old firm bounce or whatever, but certainly they've been there and done that. They know, at business ends of season, they know what to do. We perhaps don't, but that's something that we can talk about in future episodes to come. But I was pleased with Derek McInnes's lineup. I think the only sort of thought I had was perhaps we might see Islam Sheznikov make his debut, but unfortunately that wasn't to be. Obviously, with the circumstances of the game and the way the game played out, we didn't get to see him, and totally understandable as to why. But in terms of the lineup in general, Altena at right back, we had Jamie McCart at left back due to Harry Milne and Stephen Kingsley both going down with injuries. Harry Milne, I think, is a few weeks. I think Stephen Kingsley, I'm not entirely sure what his injury was, but Derek McInnes said that it was at the start of the week that Harry Milne picked up his injury whilst in training, and then it was the end of the week when Stephen Kingsley picked up his injury. So to go into it where Dundee have kind of turned a little bit of a corner themselves and found a bit of form because of their wide players, and I think we saw during the 90 minutes the Dundee wide players were their main threat. Not having a recognised left back was a concern. However, Jamie McCart is a defender that, for me, and we've spoken about the defensive options that Hearts have, and I've continuously forgotten that Jamie McCart exists as a Hearts player. So seeing him line up at left back, I was interested to see how it would go, but I was pleasantly surprised at how well he did.
Yeah, Alan, there had to have been an eye on the Celtic result in the Hearts camp, and there must have been at least a thought of, right, that's O'Neill back. We know how successful they were with him in charge during his interim spell earlier in the year. Then the Wilfried Nosey unpleasantness happened to them, which I couldn't get enough of, quite frankly. But now O'Neill's back. First game back with him in charge, they go out and they scud their opposition 4-0. That puts, by its definition, that puts pressure on Hearts to then put on a show and really again answer that with a statement performance of their own. To lose Milne earlier in the week for the next, I think the reports are that he's going to be injured for the next 100 or 120 weeks. Depends on who you ask, though. And then to lose Kingsley right before the match because of apparently a tweaked groin, that immediately puts the O's up because, like you mentioned there, Stephen Presley's had Dundee rather playing not pretty football but effective football in the recent games. They had won 3 straight coming into this one, so it was going to be a tricky tie, especially at Dens Park. Jimmy McCart slots in there at left back. I kind of had the same feeling as you. I was like, "Oh, he's back. Is he still there again?" It's like he hasn't played a lot of football, and when he hasn't been the most convincing player on the park for Hearts. So that kind of causes a bit of a slight concern. Felt like he did okay though, like considering that he was our only option at left back, and he's not even a left back. That he did pretty well.
Yeah, I would say so. I think the other side of the pitch we had Altena. I'm still trying to figure out how to pronounce his name. I think he's okay with both options. I think that's what I saw in the press conference. That's what I'm going with. I'll maybe alternate we go, but in front of him we played Thomas Bernt Magnuson, and I think this idea of having sort of one overlapping fullback that gets beyond is something that we've obviously seen more so on the left-hand side with Milne when he's played with Kizaridis in front of him, because obviously we all know Kizaridis' preferences are to cut in, and Milne sort of makes that overlap option. Altona on the right appears to be, and you spoke about it in our episode, he likes to attack. His output in attacking numbers is, I think, why he's at Hearts. We're yet to really see him in a defensive capacity, but I thought he did okay against Dundee. But I feel like the idea with Magnuson in front of him was Magnuson would cut in and become that third central midfielder next to Benny and Devlin, and Altona would kind of have freedom on the right hand side. But I wasn't, and I've been a fan of Thomas Bernt Magnuson in the glances that we've seen of him so far. But I just feel like that position is not. He didn't really look all that comfortable out there, and it's understandable. I think again, like I say, in an ideal world, you maybe have Islam Chesnikov in there. If he'd maybe had another week's training, he might well have started in that position, but he's obviously maybe not quite ready for that. And that was the only area that during the game itself, as the way the game played out, particularly in the first half, I was a bit, I'm not entirely sure about this. This is not, Thomas isn't doing what he's been doing. But, again, it's one of these situations. It's a square peg in a round hole, which we don't like, but I can imagine that, as I say, once the Kazakhstan winger Islam Chesnikov, who's finally arrived and does actually exist and is not a figment of AI-generated imagination. Once he is fit, he will hopefully take that right-hand side spot.
Yeah, a bit of an odd one playing Magnuson there. Kind of smacks of one of these ones where a manager will identify a particular strength that he feels goes up against a particular weakness in another player. I do think that Chesnikov could probably have started, to be honest. He seems to be pretty fit and he seems to be quite ready to go, like from what he's been saying and stuff like that. It doesn't sound like he's feeling too much rust. And frankly, I would like to see what he's made of as soon as possible, quite frankly, because he's been so hyped up and we've waited so long that I just wish that he could get on the pitch already. But I'm completely in agreement with you regarding Magnuson. I don't feel like he was comfortable on the right-hand side. I'm not aware of him ever having been the player previously. I might be wrong, but I don't think it's ever been something that was touted as like something that he was capable of doing. He had Altena behind him as well, and Altena is more of a kind of natural right back than we've seen in that position at times this year. So I really don't know. We would need to be able to ask Derek McInnes why he's chosen that particular lineup, but I just feel like it's not what I would have done. But then again, McInnes is the manager of Heart Midlothian and is top of the table, and I'm not. So, he had his reasons.
There is that.
To me, I don't understand what they could possibly have been.
Yeah, and I think we spoke about it on last week's show about the reaction to the Livingston game and how poor that second half against Livingston was, and we wanted Hearts to go out against Dundee right from the start and get in their faces and try and put a mark on it. But it was Dundee that had the very first chance of the game after 2 minutes. It was a well saved effort by Schwolov to dive and tip it wide. And I think Dundee for most of the game, they had some chances, but I think that chance in particular was one that stands out for me, and that was right at the start of the game. But like we said, Dundee are in a bit of form, or they found a bit of form, so it was always going to be a difficult tie, and we need to start coming out of the blocks quicker. And I know it's harder to do it away from home than it is at home, I would imagine, but yeah, it was frustrating to see them have the sort of first major chance, but it was also impressive to see Alex Schwolow at full stretch to kind of tip it away, because it was like a comfortable save, but it was also, you could see that he had to go full stretch to get that away. And I'm not saying there was any danger of it going in, like he had it covered, but it was a bit of a sort of a warning shot from early on.
It was a nice test of his reflexes, and he like you say, it was very well saved. Um, I think if it had been struck with slightly more pace, it might have given him a bit more trouble. But
Yeah,
yeah, he was very. It showed he was alert and awake, which was really good because that wasn't the case in the Hibs game. So always good to see your keeper get tested early and see his reflexes have made the trip with them to
yeah,
the away ground. Um, to your point about wanting to get off on more of an aggressive footing, I think it's all the more imperative when you're away from home in a game like that to prepare in such a fashion as is conducive to a more aggressive start. You want to sort of squeeze the fan base of the home side out of the game as early as possible when you go to a place like that.
yeah,
So I think it's more important to be aggressive, put in a decent tackle, try and get the ball up the park, try and test their goalkeeper, because if their goalkeeper was the first one tested, you never know what might happen. And if that goalkeeper seems to not quite look at his best, or you manage to set up something nice, a nice half chance, and you manage to take something from it, that can completely psychologically take the home fans out of the game if you're the away team. So, yeah, it's very, very important, I think, in games like that to make sure that you do put your best foot forward from the off, especially against a team like Dundee who had been playing, like I say, not that well, but with pretty good form. They had been winning games, they've been scrapping and winning games. So if they're a pretty decent defensive organised team, you need to try and put pressure on that, and you need to try and establish yourself alpha, dog of the pack, so to speak.
yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you. The sort of the first half hour of the game was a bit back and forward. I felt like we had a couple of moments, and as did they, and it was a typical away performance where I think we were sort of just trying to feel our way in, and we had a couple of chances, but nothing to really write home about. And then the first sort of moment of the game that had controversy, perhaps, was the Hearts goal from Claudio Braga, the free kick. Now, the free kick was given, and the referee allows Hearts to take it. The ball is played, I think there's 2 passes before it reaches Braga's feet. And he sort of, I don't know whether it's a miscontrol or he means to do it, but he sort of takes it with the back of his heel. I don't know if it hits the back of his heel or not, but he seems to.
That wee touch by Braga was outstanding, man.
Well, see, this is the thing. Whether he means it or not, it's a fantastic effort. And the way he adjusts and reacts to it, and he gets the ball under control, where it looks like he was in control of it the whole time. And it's a fantastic finish. Obviously, the controversy being, the Dundee players were not very happy because the free kick was taken considerably further forward from where the fouls, or from where it was supposed to have been taken. And the other point of contention was the ball was still in motion when the free kick was taken, like it wasn't a dead ball. I understand the Dundee frustrations with that, because yes, the free kick was taken further forward from where it should have been, but you see that every week. You see it every week in every stadium in the country. I'm talking Scotland, England. It happens every week. My pet peeve is players taking extra yards from throw-ins. Moving 5 yards further down the touchline from a throw-in, things like that. I can't stand that. It's one of those little niche things in football that really just grinds my gears a bit. But the Dundee players were right to be aggrieved about it. I'm not going to lie, because listen, we stole 10 yards and moved further up the pitch. But I think if I was a Dundee player, I'd probably be a bit more concerned with the fact that 2 straightforward passes cut through their entire side. Really, whether the ball was dead or not, I think they showed a few replays, and I think it was kind of noted that it wasn't, or at least there was a little bit of movement on the ball. But in that situation, you can't. There's not a lot you can do. There's no VAR for that. You're not going to look at ball movement. So, listen, a very good goal. Yes, it had some elements of controversy, but I don't care a jot. taking the lead was massive.
Aye. Whether it was moving or not, whether we stole 10 yards or not, I'm just going to chalk that up to Dundee's players moaning and talking pish. I really don't care what they think. Yeah, the goal stood, and as far as I'm concerned, it should have. Whether it should have or not, it should have.
Yeah,
I don't really
I
have
think
much
as
else
well
to say
that
about it.
I get you. I think the referee was Ryan Lee, which is not a name I'm all that familiar with. I think he's one of the new ones on the block, and I don't think he was particularly brilliant. I think he showed a level of an inexperienced ref, if I'm being honest, and kind of let
It was
VAR
pish.
talk him through the game effectively. But yeah, listen, when I saw his name against the fixture, I couldn't pick him out of lineup. I had no idea who he was, and he did seem a bit weak on certain occasions. But yeah, it was a good goal, and as I say, taking the lead was important because if we go behind or if we're trailing, it changes the dynamic of that game. One thing that then did change the dynamic of the game was the next moment of controversy, and that was the red card for Alex Schwolov. What were your thoughts on that particular incident?
Before we get on to the red card, I just want to mention one other moment which happened in the 38th minute, and it
Okay,
was a really nice bit of link-up play between Altena and Kiziridis on the right-hand side. And I
I know
just
what you're
wanted to
talking
make the
about.
point that Kiziridis seems to be so adaptable. Like he's able to he's making friends all over the place. Like he links up so well with Braga, and he links up really well on the left hand side with either of Kingsley or Milne. And then he's over on the right hand side, which we've sort of seen him extras on when he's deployed on the right hand side. But like him and Altona have looked like they were having a lot of fun together out there. Lovely wee move, creates a half chance. Unfortunately, no one was able to get on the end of the ball into the 6 yard area. But just wanted to point
Mhm.
that out before we move on to the red card. Some nice play there. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Chesnikov and Altona link up. That might be one of the defining partnerships of the second half of our season. Having a proper right back and having Chesnikov in, if he lives up to the hype, could be game changing. To move on to the red card, from I don't think it should have been a red card, quite frankly. Uh, the is it Yogan? His name is the
Yeah, I
The
think
Dundee
so.
forward.
The winger,
He takes
yeah.
a touch to take it around Shvolov and fucks it basically, and then he sort of collapses into Shvolov, who's been wrong-footed. I do not think that that was a foul. I certainly don't think it constitutes a clear
Goal
goal
scoring
scoring
opportunity.
opportunity that he's prevented, because the touch away from him was mistouched, and then he sort of, I think he's realised that, and he's just kind of collapsed into or fallen onto Shvolov. Shvolov doesn't go in for a tackle; he goes into he tries to follow the ball and sort of is wrong footed. So I don't think it should have been a red card. The offside
Fair.
call that was initially made and then was overturned, I think they're right. I don't think he was offside, but I don't think
Yeah,
it should have been a red card either.
that's
That's
fair.
just my
That's
opinion,
fair.
and I obviously maroon tinted glasses. But when I look at the touch that's taken initially to go to try and get around Shvolov, he touches it too far away from Shvolov, and instead of trying to follow the ball, he sort of just falls into Shvolov.
Fair.
That's how
Fair
I
enough.
saw it, and I might be wrong, but like that to me should not have been a red.
No, I think that's interesting. I watched it and had a different opinion. I felt like it was a foul. Whether it was a red or not, I don't know. But I think if your goalkeeper's coming off his line that far and making a foul, he kind of opens himself to the possibility of being sent off. I agree with you on the two offsides. I think
That's
the
the point
first
I'm
one,
trying to make, though, is that it wasn't a foul.
yeah, no,
The
that's
boy
fair.
missed the boy mishits a touch to go around him, and then just sort of collapses into him. It
I
wasn't
think is the
one to
thing.
swallow that
I think
was within there.
I think it's a point that I had in my notes. I think Alex Shwolov coming off his line is not something we've seen from him since he's really been with us. He's not really been prone to coming off his line. He's not really had to. And then
Still really
in
very
that,
good at
well,
it.
yeah, in that instance, whether I'd have to watch it back again. I've seen some moments from the Dundee game over and over again, but they involve our other goalkeeper, not so much the German one. Um, but that, like you say, it takes a touch away from goal, and there are two Hearts defenders I think Halkett gets back on the line, or I'm not sure who it is that's on the line, but somebody's on the line, and I think it might have been Jamie McCart based off where it was on the pitch and my memory of it, that was near him. And there's covering defenders there. So, denial of a goal scoring opportunity is what it went down as. And whilst I understand that, I do feel like it was harsh. But I think the only sort of saving grace we would have had if one of those calls was offside, because then you're looking at it going, well, doesn't matter what Schwolow does because the boy's offside. Sadly, he was onside on both counts, both phases of play. He was onside, and I do think Schwolow comes off his line and he's well entitled to do that. But I don't feel like it's based off that moment alone. It's clearly not a strength of his. He will now have a suspension, and I believe it'll be for Wednesday's tie at home against St.Mirren. And he'll be available beyond that. Whether he'll play beyond that or not, we'll wait and see. I wonder if this is an opening for Craig Gordon to get a run of games now, perhaps. Who knows? But we'll see how that goes, and we'll talk about that as we talk about the second half a bit more. But going in at half time, obviously Alex Schwolow gets sent off, and we take Claudio Braga off in favour of Craig Gordon, of course, to come on. Just prior to half time, Craig Gordon has to save the resulting free kick, or he's basically thrust straight into the action. And his first involvement is to organise a wall that looked like it had about 5 or 6 men in it. I enjoyed Cammy Devlin joining the wall. There was something quite funny about that.
It's always it's so funny, isn't it, when like the shortest guy on a football team is like right in the slap bang in the middle of the wall, wanting to get in about it.
That was me. That was me. I was pushed out the wall many a time in favour of people much bigger than me, which is entirely fair. Enthusiasm and energy gets you so far, but I wouldn't want to get pelted in the face. But little Cammy goes into the wall, and Gordon sort of waves him away, and then he's setting it up, and it was an important opportunity. Dundee score that. It's 1-1 going in at half time. We're down to 10 men. The game could have turned, and Gordon does what Gordon does, and it was a very good save from the free kick, especially for a goalkeeper that is essentially cold. That was his first appearance of the season. To come off the bench, and in an ideal world, he comes off the bench and maybe has to kick a few goal kicks and maybe throw out a ball or two before he's really fully tested. But his first involvement was tested straight off the bat, and he does fantastically well to save that effort. And obviously that took us in at half time at 1-0 up, which, again, like I say, was a very, very positive place to be, considering how the game could have went otherwise in that first 45.
Completely agreed, yeah. And like much the same as Schwolow in the second minute with his save. Nice test of reflexes for Craig Gordon, a test of his readiness. And again, he showed that he was mentally as alert and prepared as he was physically for this return. It's been a long time coming. I feel it should have happened sooner, personally. I would say that. I'm very biased when it comes to who our number one goalkeeper should be. It's frustrating because I was very critical of Schwolow in the Hibs game. He made up for it since the first part. He's been pretty solid. I think that this red card, which again, I could be mental, I could be wrong, but I don't think it should have been a red card personally. I wonder how that affects him mentally and how that affects his season. Because if Craig Gordon comes in on Wednesday, which presumably he will, and is just as good as he has been, where does that leave Schwolow? Because the only reason Craig Gordon was at starting games was because Schwolow had a very solid start at Hearts. If Craig Gordon is really good going forward, you might find that it's the reverse situation the rest of the way. And I would have no problem with that. I think that if a guy is performing in his role, there's really no reason to replace him. You don't really have a right to replace him if he's performing really well in his role. So it's going to be quite interesting to see what happens past the suspension. Because if Craig Gordon comes in and is playing this well, he's probably not going to be able to sit on the bench the rest of the year and maybe play the cup matches. But by the same token, Schwolo's going to be like, well, I've got so many clean sheets in my first however many games. Yeah. And I've been very solid since I took over from Xander Clark. Like, I shouldn't be sitting on the bench, only playing cup games. We're both number one, so it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. It's one of those good dilemmas that we always talk about managers having. It's like, who do you start? Do you start Scotland's number one or this guy who's got X amount of clean sheets? It's a good dilemma for Derek McInnes to have, but for the players themselves, it's going to be interesting to see where this goes.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't think even Craig Gordon mentioned it in his comments after the game. He wasn't expecting to play much of a part at the weekend, but he certainly maximised his minutes.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's interesting. Obviously, we talk about goalkeepers. Obviously, Xander Clark has left the club and gone on loan to Doncaster for the remainder of the season. So even that decision, if Gordon wasn't fit, if Gordon wasn't on the bench because he wasn't fit, you're talking about Ryan Fulton maybe coming in out the cold. And I'm not saying Ryan Fulton wouldn't have made the saves that Gordon made, but I
He
would
wouldn't have.
bet on Gordon making them more than I'd bet on Fulton making them. To be fair, to be clear, but it just shows you the strength and depth within that area that we have. I do feel like in the summer it might be an area that gets addressed because I'm sure there'll be some departures there. But yeah, it's just reassuring to see Craig off the bench and like it's Craig Gordon. There's no drop in quality from Schwolow to Gordon. We're not bringing on a young goalkeeper. We're not bringing on a McFarlane or a Harry Stone if he was still at the club. There's no drop off there, and it will be, like you say, it'll be very, very interesting to see what happens. Like you say, post suspension for the cup tie against Falkirk at the weekend, for example. That's probably going to be when McInnes is going to have to make that decision. But he made a decision after him. He brought Jordi off and brought on Michael Steinvender. I think purely for the pure and simple fact of Steinvender being a much more defensive minded defender. I think, McInnes kind of felt like, right, this half is going to be tough. And I think he said after the game something like he spoke to the players at halftime and told them that they had to do 1.5 jobs. Basically, they've got to do their own job, but they've got to pick up a little bit extra because they're now down to 10 men. And I think it's that old adage of playing against 10 men is sometimes harder than playing against 11. And I think played out in the second half. I think Derek McInnes deserves praise because I think he got all of his substitutions absolutely spot on at the times when he made them. It's strange to think about it, but with about 15 minutes to go of the game, I felt like, yeah, this is ours. Like we've got this. Like it was so well managed and so well controlled for a 45 minutes with 10 men. I will say as well, the travelling support were absolutely outstanding, and Derek McInnes gave them massive plus at full time as well. And obviously the players were over celebrating with them because they know how important that 3 points could be. And the fans played a big, big part in that because they didn't stop and they almost took on that role of I was going to say 12th man, but maybe 11th man is more appropriate. But yeah, it was the second half. I don't really know in terms of chances, etc. I don't really want to reel through too many of them, but Dundee were quite predictable, I'll be honest. A lot of their attacks come down the sides, and our defence, the old adage of as strong as the old Castle Rock, I think it was very much on show, and I think it was organised, I think it was balanced, and it just shows you how complete that team looks, and they knew what their jobs were. There was no drop off, there was no worries, there was no kind of nervousness. It was very much, if they keep shelling the ball into the box, we deal with it every time, and that's exactly what happened.
Yep. I think the way to succeed when you've had a man sent off and you're at a deficit, you're not going to physically outnumber your opponents. So you have to try and, in some way, shape, or form, psychologically outnumber them. And it felt like Hearts did that. Hearts went into those reserves of resilience that they have this year, which we've seen previously. Those results, like when we were 3-0 down, or when we've won games late, or we've taken points where we looked like we were dead in the water for periods of the game. This club has that, and especially at the back. We've got experience at the back. We've got players who have very good positional sense. We've got players who are capable of really, really frustrating a forward line, and that's what Hearts did at the weekend for most of the second half, especially that kind of latter section of it.
Yeah.
Just a defensive masterclass by Derek McInnes as well. Like, he adjusted the strategy so well. Just, he got everything right. Like, it's not so often that you see a manager get everything right in those situations. Like, it was so easy for a manager to just kind of chuck it once they go a man down and be like, frustrated and shouting and bawling. But McInnes, he has a backup plan for those situations clearly, and the players went out and they executed it to perfection.
Yeah, I
What I
think
was going to ask you about was, sorry if I could just,
no, no, of
I'll
course.
let you go and then I'll go move on to what I was going to say.
No, no, you carry on. I was just going to make a point about his subs with 20 minutes to go, but you crack on.
Go ahead. I'll move on to the next bit after that.
No, I was just suggesting that you mentioned there, like he has a plan, an idea of how to sort of manage these moments. I think as well, what he has now that he's not had throughout his managerial career is he has options to be able to do these things. He has the resources to change it. When he needs to, like he took off Kizaridis and Shanklin with 20 minutes to go and brought on Frankie Kent and Pierre Landry Cabori, obviously fresh back from the AFCON, having been eliminated with Burkina Faso. I thought Cabori did a fantastic job. He was a hold up merchant. He was just up the top end of the pitch, trying to be that out ball,
Yeah.
and he did a fantastic job. And Frankie Kent came on, and now Frankie Kent is not everybody's favourite centre half at the moment, but even when he came on, I felt like, right, that makes sense. I can see why he's done that. He's thrown another defender on. We ended the game with, I think, every fit centre half that we've got playing across the back line, which was quite something to see. But yeah, you're absolutely right. McInnes nailed it. And, for as much as we sit here every week and we praise the players and we talk about individual player performances, I think Derek McInnes deserves a huge amount of respect and praise for that. Obviously, Lawrence Shanklin went off, and I didn't see it at the time, but when he apparently was a little bit in a huff about being subbed off. But he has since apologised and said, I just want to win football games. I just want to be involved. Nobody wants to get subbed off, but it's the manager's decision, and I was wrong. And that shows a maturity from Shankland as well for him to come out and say that. But yeah, Derek
It
McInnes,
does, but if I can just interject there,
of
he's the
course,
captain of the team.
yeah,
Shouldn't be doing that in the first place. It's fine that he apologised about it, and I appreciate that he did. That's completely unacceptable, though. Don't spit the
yeah,
dummy out at your manager on the touchline in front of your teammates like that. You're the fucking captain of the team.
yeah.
It's,
I
it's,
think
it's
I think
almost reminiscent of some things that we saw from him last year. And he's played much better. He wasn't particularly great this weekend.
no,
I felt that he looked like he was pissed off the entire game. Frankly, he should not be doing that. Whether he apologised or not, it's not the kind of role model that you should be putting the armband on. So he needs
no.
to cut that out.
I think it's an element of just being passionate and being enthusiastic and wanting to help the team and wanting to be involved. And maybe in the moment he's thinking, why am I coming off? There's other players that could come off before me. But it seems as if he went and sat in the dugout and Derek McInnes didn't really acknowledge him having his little tantrum, and McInnes just kind of let him blow off some steam. And then after it was like, right, are you finished? Right, let's get on with it. And like I say, Derek McInnes was proven to be correct, and I think parking the
Of course he
bus, so
was.
to
It was
speak.
it was it was game management when they were a man down. That's what makes me so
Yeah.
pissed off at Shankland about it.
Plus,
If
I
he's
think
if
as
we're up
well.
four, if we're up 3-0 and he's on a hat trick, yeah, maybe have a bit of a tantrum. But when we're clinging to a 1-0 lead and we really need to prioritise defending against a team that's quite spirited out wide, they were breaking us down gradually, more and more and more. We were going to get exhausted eventually. It was the right thing to do to add that extra centre half in there. You're the
I
captain
think
of the
as
team.
well.
You say, all right, thanks for the minutes, and then you move on.
Yeah,
It
but
doesn't
I
matter how
think
passionate he is. It's not acceptable. You're a
yeah,
professional and you're the captain.
he has since apologised that he's acknowledged he was wrong and that Derek McInnes was absolutely right. Of course, he was. I think to kind of move on from it a little bit, I think the best thing about that, taking Kizaridis off and Shankland off with 20 minutes to go, gives them 20 minutes of rest that they weren't going to get otherwise. We've got a game on Wednesday. That could prove important for because you'd imagine those two are nailed on starters for that game, of course. But yeah, the second half sort of fizzed along, and like I said, Dundee were shelling balls into the box, and our defence were dealing with them all. Shall we just talk about it now? Shall we just talk about the glorious Craig Gordon saves? He made one
Before
from Dre
there
Wright
was some,
header.
there was that one other thing I have to discuss before we do, and it happened in the 68th minute,
Yeah.
62nd minute. Sorry, Kubetio brings down Kiziridis just outside the
Yes.
box. Should that have also been a red card? Now it doesn't look like there's much in it. However, there is very clearly a hand on Kiziridis' back.
I think it would have been very soft. I do. I know the incident you're referring to, but I
Yeah,
think it would have been very, very soft. I think Kizaridis, if it's in my head, I'm trying to replay it, but feel like there was maybe a wee bit of an element of Kizarides maybe buys it a little bit or tries to buy it a little bit, if I'm being honest, and maybe that counts against them. But
Yeah.
I know the incident you're referring to, and it would have been very, very interesting to see what would have happened. But yeah, again, it goes back to having an inexperienced referee that perhaps rather than make a big decision like that, maybe just kind of shied away and thought, right, I'm just going to
Mm.
be a wee bit invisible for a bit, perhaps.
Probably something along those lines, and I think you're completely right. I think Kazarides does make a bit too much of a meal of it to get something from it. But it is quite interesting to me that there's very clearly there is a hand on the back.
Yeah,
I didn't see a good enough angle to see if there was enough of a push. Because Kazarides certainly goes down with a hand on the back, and you've seen that given on many occasions. It's just very interesting to me that there was not even a VAR check apparently for that. Um, and there wasn't anything sort of made of it. It was just like, no, you're acting it, get up. To
yeah.
me, there
Well,
was enough evidence to have a look because there was the hand on the back, but that's just something
that's fair.
that I
That's fair.
wanted to
No,
point out.
I don't know who was on
Right,
VAR. It was probably one of
let's
the
talk about Craig Gordon.
advertisers. Yeah, let's do it. Well, with 5 minutes to go, he makes a save from Dre Wright. It was a header, I think, or a shot. I can't remember which one it was, but he tips it over the
That one
bar.
was a shot. He
Yeah, and
dropped with some pace as well, and he manages to get fingertips to it.
yeah, it's
Absolutely
just
insane, the reflexes that man has.
it's so funny because we're sitting here talking about the saves that he makes, and I'm sort of going, yeah, they're just Craig Gordon things. Like it's nothing that he's not done for his whole career, but like the the main talking point and the save that secured the win was just absolutely sensational. The ball comes in to the box, and the Dundee attacker goes for it and gets a very good head on the ball, heads it down, which is where you should be putting that ball. He puts it exactly where it needs to go. And after he makes contact with the ball, he throws his arms up in the air and starts to run towards the Dundee fans because he is 99% sure that that's going in the back of the net. And Craig Gordon just reaches out a hand. He just comes out of nowhere and somehow manages to get down and claw it away. The ball, I didn't appreciate it at the time when I watched it the first time round. The ball's actually past Gordon. Like, it's not over the line, but it's past him. He has to sort of go back and get a hand to it, which makes it even more of a remarkable save. It was just sensational.
Yeah, the man is walking perfection. I don't know what else you expected.
Very true.
The bounce on that header is very awkward. And as you say, it's past Gordon, which means that he, in all likelihood, cannot see that ball. If he can, it's not very well. And at that point, he needs to be pinpoint in his accuracy when he swipes that palm across. And he just stopped that and kept it out. And that right there secured 3 points. The Hearts that, like many people have said in the last couple, excuse me, since the game, that could end up being defining for our season.
Yeah,
These
yeah,
are the things that
massively.
wins. It's not the 4-0s and 6-0s and 3-0s that are the ones you remember. It's the times when it looked the chips were down and you pulled out the 3 points. And that is one of those occasions. And it's just a wonder save. Technically, it's a wonder save. And the man has not played a minute of domestic football all season until just before half time. He didn't even start the game. He mentioned in his comments after the game that he went out for a workout during the half time break because he needed to basically get warm. The man
Yeah,
wasn't even up when he came into the game. And so it's just extraordinary to see that he at 43 years old, we're down to 10 men, and he pulls out something like that in the dying seconds. The last bit of action in the game is him making that save to earn us the 3 points.
yeah. And I mean, he said after the
The
game that
greatest.
he was asked. Yeah, well, he was asked after the game about where that save ranks in terms of his career, and he said it's probably one of the best ones. And we've seen Craig Gordon make some phenomenal saves. He made some brilliant saves when he was at Sunderland as well. The one against, I think it was Bolton, is one that sticks out in my memory as well. So for the man himself to say that he doesn't remember many better saves than that shows how big a save it was and how important a save it could be. And I think he's saying it, yeah, it was a great save, but I think when he says it's one of the best he's made, I think he is probably looking at it going, it secures 3 points in a game that wasn't a classic by any means, but we dug in, we showed that mark of a team that don't want to lose and don't. I'm not going to say don't know how to lose, but a team that know the pressure is on them because it is. Let's be honest, the season is ticking along nicely. You know, it was another game ticked off the list, another 3 points added, and it that game and that save, like you mentioned it earlier, that could be instrumental if the season pans out how we are all dreaming of it. We might be looking back at the end of the season going, that Craig Gordon save, that was what did it. That was what has brought us a trophy. That is what, that's why we are where we are, and it's remarkable. Like, this man is the Craig Gordon story is sensational. I mean, we could sit here all night and talk about him, and I'd really like to, but I can't, to be honest. But it was just my sort of takeaway from it was this is a man that had a horrific injury not that long ago, was potentially
Multiple
told he might
times in his
never.
career as well.
Well, yes, exactly, and he's been through so much, and we know that we're winding down towards the end of the Craig Gordon story. We know that, but I know you don't want to
That's
talk
enough
about
of that
it.
chat.
I can see
I
you
don't want to
welling
hear
up.
it.
I can see you welling up there, but we know that it's not far away. Let's be clear. But
He's
for
not going to
him,
last forever, we'll say.
for him to have that moment, regardless of how the season goes now, regardless of how many more games he plays, regardless of how our season finishes, for Craig Gordon to have that moment to look back and go, that was huge. I contributed something. If this is to be his last season, which I think all the signs point to it being that, but who knows? If it is to be, he's got that moment in this season to say, however it ends, I had an impact. I maybe didn't play every week, but when I came in, that's what I did. And it's almost like leaving a mark on it and saying, yeah, just remember that's I've got. And that's why, I don't know if you had anything else to touch on from the Dundee game, but that's why going into the game on Wednesday against St Mirren at Tynecastle, I have zero concerns about who's in goal. you know, Craig Gordon will play because Schwolow will be suspended. And you mentioned it earlier, Scotland's number one goalkeeper. The fans were serenading him at the end. Cammy Devlin pushing him towards the fans really got me as well. Yeah, it's nice. It's refreshing to not worry about who's between the sticks for Hearts. I mean, we've been blessed with some fantastic goalkeepers down the years, but Craig Gordon is up there as the greatest Scottish goalkeeper. I think we had a conversation about it in our group chat previously. I don't know many goalkeepers better than Gordon.
There aren't any if you're talking about Scottish goalkeepers, as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned. He waited so long to finally be able to try and stake his claim this season, and he did that in miraculous fashion. Personally, I think he's the guy that should be in goal anyway. He always should have been since he's been fit. And that's not anything. That's not a knock on Schwolow, but like Craig Gordon at his best is still a better goalkeeper than Schwolow at 43 years old. His age doesn't really matter. He showed that at the weekend. He is just so good. He might not be as good as prime Craig Gordon was, but prime Craig Gordon made the best save in Premier League history. Like
Yeah.
it's like saying, "Oh, Buffon at 46 wasn't quite as good as Buffon at 55." You know, it's like it's still Buffon. The one last thing I want to talk about with that save is how much that will bolster the morale and the mood of the defenders that were on, because defenders put in such a shift. For that to then be undone somewhat by an equaliser would have been gutting for them, because they deserve that as well. They deserve that to be validated, the performance and the effort that they put in. And Craig Gordon making that save is going to do that. They've got that confidence in Craig Gordon behind them that, yeah, if we can't get to it, he will.
Yeah.
And they put in such a great effort as a collective, the defence, all five of them in the end. That will help them as well. That will be a massive boon to their morale and to their momentum to see that save and to get those 3 points and that clean sheet after the Herculean effort that it would have taken, because they were outnumbered for the entire second half and they were under a lot of shit, and they rose to it.
Yeah, and I think it's like you say, it's justified, and that performance was a scrap. It was hard fought, but we deserved it. We deserved the win, and I think that speaks volumes to the fact that, like you said, for 45 minutes we were playing with 10 men. We absolutely deserved to come away with 3 points, and even Stephen Presley, obviously a former teammate of Craig Gordon, spoke about it after the game and said, for all the chances we created, they equal to them, and Craig Gordon pulls off a wonder save at the end, and you can't help but acknowledge that it was just absolutely sensational. But like I say, we kind of wrap it up there for the Dundee fixture and focus our attentions to the next game, which is St Mirren at home, back at Tynecastle on Wednesday evening, a 7:45 kickoff. St Mirren are in a bit of a dip at the moment. They've not had a great last few weeks. They obviously lost against Rangers. They lost against Motherwell, which two difficult games. But at the weekend, they lost 2-0 to Falkirk, a result that I don't think many people would have seen coming because, I know Falkirk are actually doing quite well. But yeah, I thought St Mirren would have been better value in that game, but sadly not. But they come to Tynecastle. Big game for us. Opportunity to keep that positive momentum rolling from the win against Dundee. Big game, midweek, under the lights. I'm going to use my phrase that I always use. I'm as confident as I will allow myself to be about a result in that game. St Mirren are in the middle of a bit of an injury crisis at the moment. I think there's 6 players, including a goalkeeper, that are out injured for this one. So again, it stacks the chips in our favour as well. So we will see what happens with that one. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a good time to run into a team like St Mirren, who are on a bit of a dip, as you say, and who have injury problems at the moment. I think it allows us a bit more flexibility with the team selection. I think it would be a good time to play Chesnikov. It's a slightly less pressure-filled atmosphere if you're playing against a team that's that weakened. Give him a chance to go out and just kind of strut stuff and show his thing, do his thing, and show us what we've got. Rather, is what I meant to say. However, they're not awful by any means. I think that their positioning in the table is it's slightly deceiving. Like, they're capable of showing up and putting in a performance. They just haven't been able to do so. And a lot of that is, again, to do with injury. At home, under the lights, hopefully the crowd will be bouncing. I think, presuming that Craig Gordon is going to get the starting goal, that'll add to the feel-good factor. Be interested to see if Kingsley's ready to go by Wednesday. It's possible we might not see him until the weekend in the Falkirk game in the Cup. But I'm pretty confident. I think Hearts should have enough about them to win this game. I hope that Lawrence Shanklin shows up ready to sort of put in a performance and justify being on for 90 minutes. Because like I say, I'm glad he apologised and showed accountability, but that just wasn't. That's been sticking in my craw a bit. He needs to do better.
Couldn't tell.
It was great to see Braga back in the scoring sheet because it feels like it's been a while. So it'll be interesting to see how he follows that up. If I was to stump for a score prediction, I'm going to say 2-0 Hearts. And then, you know what? I'm going to say Shanklin and Braga both score.
Fair enough. I think you've kind of ticked every box that I was going to touch on. I think Chesnikov, whether he starts or not, I think he'll definitely be involved in some capacity. He obviously arrived too late to feature in our previous game, but he apparently met Derek McInnes at Tynecastle and was impressed with the stadium. And obviously, I think he said something along the lines of he can't wait to play in front of the supporters in a full stadium, because obviously when he saw it, it would have been empty. So it'll be very, very interesting to see what Derek McInnes' approach is with him, whether he will drip feed him into the team or whether it'll be a case of, right, we've brought you in to make a difference, you're starting right away, like he seems to have done with Jordi Altena. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think St Mirren could be a tricky customer, but I think if we turp and put in our performance that we know we can, I think it's a 3 points in the bag for us. And that would obviously take us to, I think, 50 points. I'm just going to double check that before I'm fact checking myself live on air.
Yeah.
So 50 points. We finished, for a bit of context, we finished last season with 52 points. We have the opportunity to go to 50 points with 17 or 18 games left to go. We have potentially 9.
Listen to that. 60.
True. Yeah, true. I'm getting my numbers muddled.
Yeah, we've played 21 at the moment, so that's 17 to go just now.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. Again, it's late in the evening. My head has gone, but listen, it's a massive opportunity for us, and I think, as I say, we have to take every step, and it's because, like I said at the start of this week's show, Celtic and Rangers appear to have started turning the wheels a bit. So it's up to us to put the foot on the gas and go, well, you can turn as many wheels as you want, but we're ahead and we have to stay ahead. McInnes has mentioned it many times, the fight is with ourselves. We don't focus on what's happening outside. There will come a point when they have to start focusing on that, though, and that may well be our undoing, who knows. But at the moment, the wheels are still turning for us and we're still going. A huge win at Dens Park. Hopefully we can follow up with 3 points against St Mirren. You gave a 2-0 scoreline prediction. I am going to be even more ballsy. I'm going to go for Heart to win by 3-0. I'm going to go for a comfortable, convincing, well, maybe not comfortable, maybe not convincing, but maybe perhaps it'll be 3 goals in it. I'll say that. I'm going to go for a Chesnikov debut goal, just because I want to see him. I will go for Chesnikov, Shankland, and I'm going to go for Halkett. We've not scored a goal from a corner for a couple of weeks. I'm going to go for a Halkett header. In terms of the left back situation, obviously you mentioned there Kingsley and Milne. If it is to be Jamie McCarthy continuing at left back, I'm not going to complain about that. He showed more than enough to me for me to be comfortable. You know, yes, he's not a natural left back, but he has played there previously and he can cover that area. So we'll wait and see. I'm sure the team news will come out. It may well, obviously we're recording this on Monday evening. The game kicks off on Wednesday, so there's not too long to wait for the next fixture. But we will see what happens. If you are going to Tynecastle on Wednesday evening, please arrive sharp, be in your seat, give the players the encouragement they need, because we have, I think, a potential 9 more home fixtures between now and the end of the season. Those are 9 cup finals that we have control as fans, as supporters. The players need it. They need the backing. We can't have moans and groans if things are not going our way. We can't have, subs coming on and fans groaning about who's being brought on. The team needs the fans, and we have to be there because, like Dundee at Dens Park, we were that 11th man. We could play a massive role as a fan base between now and the end of the season. And who knows? Listen, I'm not ready to say mark of champions yet. I'm not there. But every game is crucial, and that is what matters.
100%. The teams that do win trophies get the job done in those situations when things maybe aren't going so well. One of the things that both Ibrox Park and Celtic Park are lauded for Europe-wide is the atmosphere in the stadiums and how difficult it is to play against them when they get control of the game or when their fans get behind them. We need to make Tynecastle into that fortress-type ground again, and we need that from the supporters. They need to be loud, they need to be boisterous from minute 1 until minute 90. They need to be singing songs about Scotland's number 1 and how we've got Lawrence Shankland and Radio Braga and etc. We need to be, screaming and bawling at the opposition anytime they've got the ball and make them rattled. Because if we can get behind the team and make the opposition rattled, and then our players do their part, there's nobody in this division that we can't scud, and we've shown that this year. Exactly. But I think that is an extra element that they do need at home, because that's the one thing that's notably not going to be there when they're away from home. You've got your away support, and that's a different sort of beast. And Derek McInnes actually made mention of that in his comments after the Dundee game, and how he wishes that was replicated. Sort of, he didn't say that exactly, but it was almost sort of that was sort of what it felt like he was implying. Was like, where is this kind of noise at home?
Yeah.
That's just the recipe that we need to be able to go above and beyond what we've even done so far. So, yeah, if you go to the match, behave yourself, but be loud, be boisterous, have fun, and get behind them. And hopefully they'll bring home another 3 points as well. I do believe they will. I'm fairly confident they will.
Yeah, well, I think we'll leave it there for this week, folks. We will be back next week to probably discuss both the St Mirren and the Falkirk Cup tie. We haven't quite worked out how the schedule is going to work for that, but likelihood is we'll maybe do a twofer in the next episode just with the midweek fixture and then the weekend game. Don't have the time to fit in a solo episode about St Mirren, but we'll touch on that for next week. Like I said at the start, if you have any thoughts, please do leave them down in the comments section down below. Drop us a subscription on our YouTube channel whilst you're there. Also, you can find all of our social media links down there whilst you're at it. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We're across the lot. Blue Sky as well, even though we're not as active on there as we have been in the past, but I'm trying my best. Also find us on Spotify, as I say. But yeah, we're going to leave it there for this week, folks. Take care and have a good one. Cheers now.